Wow, well, probably going back to when I was a contracting officer, and I was the person responsible for negotiating a contract to get mobile subscriber equipment, or MSE. It was the most ambitious Signal Corps project ever, and I was surrounded by a lot of wonderful, really smart people, mostly senior to me. I learned a lot from them. But more importantly, we were able to put a capability into the hands of our soldiers that was beyond anything that existed before. This allowed them to finally operate in the battle space without having to worry about bringing large wires and trunks and waiting for the communications gear to set up. They were able to contact people on the battle space without even knowing where they were, because they each had a distinct phone number. And it was sort of like the beginning of cell telephones, but in the battle space. And it was probably the most important thing that I was ever involved in. I was very fortunate. I started as an intern. I had a lot of interesting assignments because there were people that must have seen something in me that decided to mentor me early, and I learned a lot from them. And by being willing to take on challenges beyond what my grade level was in order to expand my capabilities as a contracting person, and that helped me, I think, become successful later on. I think being willing to take on challenges is what it's really all about. There are a number of people who started working for the Army around the same time as I did that, quite frankly, never even got into the first level of supervision because they just took it as a job. I looked at it as a career, and in hindsight, I could say it was an important career, one that perhaps the general public doesn't always understand. But we need to realize that what we do is not buy weapon systems. What we do is we keep soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines safe. And that's because they have the best weapon systems. Well, I think that probably my fondest memory was meeting my wife. I had a desk by a doorway, and in those days before computers, there was a lot of paper that moved around the office, and she came through with sort of a grocery cart loaded with a lot of paper documents, and she banged into my desk, and I think I knew almost immediately that she was the one. And a couple of years later, we were married, and now we've been married for 37 years. We have two wonderful children. My son works for the Corps of Engineers as a natural resource specialist. And my daughter manages a depot out in Washington State, and she's a lieutenant commander in the Naval Reserve. And we're very proud of them. But if she hadn't banged into my desk that day, I'm not sure what would have happened. I was working at the Pentagon as the acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Procurement when 9/11 hit. And we realized very quickly that not only were a number of our customers who we used to pass in the hall were now no longer with us, and how sad that was, but we had to go out and start to do the rebuilding of the Pentagon. I was fortunate. My building was, my part of the building was a few levels away from the impact point, but part of the Army Procurement Office, which was actually in the basement, was close enough to the impact point that it had done enough damage to the equipment that we had to get it all moved out. And we had to motivate the people to come back to work and to do the jobs that were necessary at that time, which was important for our country. When we first found out that we were going to be closing Fort Monmouth and moving to Aberdeen Proving Ground, obviously there was a lot of angst amongst the existing workforce. And part of my job as the leader of an organization that was really, we're really at the pointy end of the spear. there's no programs, there's no R&D, there's no support services that happen unless we execute a contract to make it happen. And so I had to keep our people motivated. And we discussed it, and I said, well, we've got to get down to Aberdeen and we need to start recruiting. And we went out to all of the local colleges and universities, and we also talked to people who had were alumni from other places, and we said, hey, we want to bring great people into this organization. And we recruited over 400 brand new interns into Aberdeen, which in itself was a challenge. Then I was able to find some people at Fort Monmouth who were willing to make the trip down here to fill leadership positions. And then I found some others who were going to retire but were willing to come down and help train these people. And by hiring some really smart, supercharged individuals and bringing people down that cared, we were able to keep the organization afloat, keep the contracting moving, and continue to build on our reputation, which was an excellent one as far as taking care of our soldiers.